Everyone thought he was a weak salaryman, but he transforms into the strongest adventurer in the world. Rick was an average guy living in a fantasy world filled with magic and adventure, but his life was far from exciting. While other young men followed their dreams and became adventurers, embarking on perilous quests to fight monsters for glory and riches, Rick chose the mundane path of a 9-to-5 job as a receptionist at an adventurer guild. After years of being stuck in a dead-end position without any prospects or a girlfriend, much like many of us, Rick finally snapped and threw his resignation letter at his boss's face, deciding to train intensively under seasoned adventurers for 2 years. After his training ends, he goes to the Adventurer Guild to take the E-Rank Adventurer examination. There he's surprised to find Elisa, his former junior from work, who has become a receptionist now. She is equally shocked to learn that Rick is aiming to become an adventurer at the ripe old age of 30. As they catch up, a drunk adventurer approaches the reception and starts harassing Elisa. When she rejects his advances, he grabs her arm and throws some misogynistic remarks at her, demanding she comply. Rick calmly intervenes and tells the man to back off while gripping him near the abdomen, causing the man to collapse and foam at the mouth. Rick shrugs it off as a side effect of too much alcohol. After that, Rick finally receives his admit card and steps outside to meet a stunning woman named Ree, who asks if everything went smoothly. Meanwhile, inside the guild, people notice the imprint of Rick's hand on the drunkard's armor. Some FBI agents arrive and identify the man as Doe, a former A-rank adventurer with assault charges. Elisa giggles to herself, realizing Rick had knocked him out. Meanwhile, Rick has entered the exam center, where the examiners are surprised to learn he is 32 years old. The examinees line up to touch a crystal ball, which will measure their magic. When Rick's turn comes, the ball shows no reaction at all, and he receives an F, prompting him to walk away disheartened. The other participants mock him, but then the ball suddenly cracks. Moving to another room, Rick faces the challenge of demonstrating his attack power using a slime bag. He remembers how his senior had once made him strike a golden slime bag thousands of times to train his body to its limits, and he thinks that he can manage to score good on this test. One by one, the other examinees take their turns, including an 11-year-old prodigy from a noble family known for his C-class magic. He performs some flashy moves before releasing a tiny fireball, which is enough to impress the crowd. However, Rick recalls another one of his seniors who used to create massive fireballs that could level up an entire mountain just to train him. When it is Rick's turn, the old examiner tells him to give up due to his age, but Rick remembers his grueling training and punches the bag with all his might. To everyone's shock, the bag explodes and flies out of the hall. Everyone is bewildered, but Rick thinks that the bag must have been defective. The next test involves defensive magic, where the instructor uses Class 3 magic on him, which leaves Rick completely unfazed. Impressed, the instructor asks if Rick used Class 2 defense magic just now, but he reveals he was using Class 1 magic, which is the weakest form. The instructor thinks it is a joke and decides to use Class 5 magic next. He advises Rick to use a higher class defense magic next, and then shoots a powerful spell at him. Despite a massive explosion, Rick remains unscathed, but the loud explosion catches the attention of a high-ranking knight named Sel. Sel enters the testing area, and he is left surprised after learning about Rick's feats. After completing his written exam, Rick takes a rest with Ree next to him. He is confident about the written exam because he has been a receptionist for over a decade, but he is worried that he messed up his practical. Ree reassures him that everything will be fine, reminding him of the hard work he had put in over the past 2 years. Suddenly, the prodigy kid named Freed approaches Rick angrily. He is not happy that a commoner like him stole the spotlight he wanted for himself. Rick is only confused by his antics when suddenly, Freed's elder sister Angelica steps in. She accuses Rick of bullying her brother and challenges him to a duel by throwing a glove at him. Rick has no desire to fight her, but he picks up her glove out of courtesy, not knowing that this gesture means he accepted her challenge. They enter the stadium, and now Rick has no choice but to fight Angelica, who is a second-class knight and as powerful as a B-rank adventurer. She declares that the loser will be the winner's servant for the rest of the life, and Rick panics. However, Ree reminds him of his intense training, which makes him sick in his stomach, but also gives him the confidence required to face Angelica. Angelica then enhances her body and sword with magic and charges at Rick with incredible speed. However, Rick instinctively dodges her attacks, surprising her. She tries to attack again, but to Rick, she seems to be moving in slow motion. He easily dodges her attack, and the frustrated Angelica keeps charging at him. She even trips and spins violently fast, and Rick believes that this is a scary technique that he could not predict. Angelica realizes this too, so she decides to use her ultimate move to take him down while he is on the back foot. He easily dodges her 2 attempts, and on the last attempt, he tries to counterattack. Luckily for Angelica, she trips, and Rick's punch only hits the ground, creating a giant hole in the ground. Angelica is terrified of him now, and she surrenders as he starts moving towards her. Rick asks what about the condition that the loser has to be the winner's servant, and Angelica runs faster than ever before to escape him. Rick is puzzled by her reaction, but Ree tells him that the exam results are about to be released and his seniors are coming to see him, which fills Rick with dread. The following morning, Rick steps into the main exam hall where all the participants are seated, and one of the attendants informs them that they have to send mana to their admit cards to know the result. If the card glows red, the participant has failed, but if it turns blue, it signifies that the participant has successfully passed the first round examination and is eligible for the second round. Rick is incredibly nervous, unsure of what to expect, but Ree comforts him and tells him to have more faith in himself. This seems to ease Rick a bit, and he admires Ree, who is as beautiful as she is kind. However, since he is quite a bit older than her, he thinks that they are not really compatible. Ree then tells him not to worry because even if he fails, he can always try again next year, although they would have to triple his training intensity. This shocks Rick completely because he cannot endure any more training. He inputs his mana into the card, which starts flashing red and blue repeatedly, building suspense until it finally turns blue, indicating he has passed the exam. He lets out a sigh of relief and sees the same joy reflected in Ree's eyes, feeling a rush of gratitude and admiration towards her. He exits the hall with Ree, smiling with contentment when suddenly a strong scent hits him, causing him to cover his nose. The scent is coming from a flamboyant man who approaches the dark elf and takes her arm, introducing himself as Raz, the eldest son of Duke of the Northern Kingdom. He ignores Rick entirely and begins flirting with Ree, stating that she is so beautiful he would like to take her as his second wife. His tone is dripping with arrogance, making it clear he is used to getting what he wants. Rick intervenes to stop him, which irritates Raz, who asks what an ugly old man wants from him. Rick declares that Ree is his girlfriend and he won't allow anyone to hit on her. Raz laughs, doubting how a middle-aged man could pull a baddie like her. Noticing the adventurer exam card in Rick's hand, Raz smirks and mocks him even more for being an F-rank adventurer at his age. Rick retorts that Raz doesn't seem that strong himself, believing that he's here for the E-rank promotion exam. Raz calls him a third-rate person for not recognizing his greatness, revealing that he became an E-rank at 14 and is currently an A-rank adventurer and the examiner for the second stage of the exam. With that, Raz turns to Ree and invites her to dinner, but she sticks to Rick and tells the arrogant nobleman to leave as his perfume is too strong for her. Raz is irritated by this, and he vows to show Rick his place when the time comes. At night, Angelica and Freed come running to their big brother Raz to complain about the middle-aged adventurer who bullied them earlier. Raz immediately realizes that they are talking about Rick, and now he has even more reason to torment him. The next morning, Rick is scared that Raz will be the examiner for the second round of the exam, which is a series of mock battles. However, luck seems to be on his side as suddenly a man calls out to him, announcing himself as his examiner for the day. Rick feels a bit relieved as the examiner, Lynx, introduces himself. He remarks that it is unusual that Rick decided to become an adventurer at 30, but he is really inspired by his determination to follow his dreams. Lynx reveals that he decided to become an adventurer at 25 himself. He aims to become an A-rank adventurer but has only reached B-rank after 20 years, but seeing Rick has doubled his enthusiasm. They shake hands before Lynx leaves, wishing Rick good luck. However, Raz was hiding just around the corner and he confronts Lynx as he is climbing down the stairs. In the waiting room, Rick is in a good mood until someone informs the participants that Lynx has fallen ill and Raz will take his place. Rick is already nervous on hearing this, but then Ree tells him that Raz must be related to Angelica and Freed, both of whom Rick has humiliated. The other participants worry too, explaining that Raz is a ruthless examiner known as the F-rank Crusher. In the arena, Raz obliterates a participant with his spells, calling him a low-ranking peasant. Just then, his butler comes there and Raz gives him a command to carry out in secrecy. Meanwhile, the terrified Rick is pacing up and down the hallway, fearing Raz will kill him. He has lost all hope, but Ree sits on the floor in front of him, telling him that she has always believed in him and that she is certain that he will emerge victorious against Raz. Her unwavering belief becomes a source of strength for Rick, and he clings to it desperately. Suddenly, a hooded figure approaches and asks if Rick wants to know his future. Rick, being naive, agrees to the free fortune reading, but just as he takes his seat in front of the hooded man, the magic spell on the chair activates and he disappears. Ree was too late to protect Rick, and she takes out her rage on the crystal wall and the fortune teller, who reveals himself as Freed. Ree demands Freed to reveal where he teleported Rick, and when he refuses, she slashes off his eyelashes, threatening his eyes next. Terrified, Freed admits he can only teleport someone 100 meters away, so Rick should not be far from here. Rick finds himself behind the exam center near the river, surrounded by black-clad individuals. The old butler reveals they are elite guards serving Raz, who wanted them to deal with the nuisance because he doesn't want to dirty his hands. The butler explains they are B, no rankers here, so Rick stands no chance. They begin cornering him when suddenly, Rick's seniors appear on a cliff, asking what he is doing there. Their arrival fills him with a sense of dread that is far greater than the anxiety he felt earlier. As his seniors descend, Rick panics and tells the butler and his men to leave as their lives are in danger. They obviously don't listen, and to save their lives, Rick lies to his seniors that these people are helping him warm up before the exam. Fed up with waiting, one of the bald thugs attacks the tall orc, but his blade breaks on contact with him. The bald man tries punching him next, but the orc breaks his fist effortlessly and then immediately heals him as well while giving him tips to become stronger. The American half-elf Miz realizes that Rick is facing trouble with these people, so he promises a peaceful resolution and pulls out an AR-15. He guns down the goons with his magical bullets as Rick watches in horror. One of the goons grabs the little vampire girl Alice, threatening the adventurers to drop their weapons or she will die. Rick pleads for Alice's release, telling the goons that they are making the worst mistake of their lives. They don't listen to him and threaten Alice, who thinks it's just a game. The goon then makes the mistake of smacking Alice, which angers her, and she blasts them all away with her powerful magic. The butler recognizes the group as the strongest S-rank adventurers, belonging to the party known as the Fist. He feels like he has found enlightenment on seeing the S-rank party in action and decides to quit the way of evil for good. Alice defeats the guards and Rick runs back to the exam hall to meet Ree, who yeets Freed into a wall just as she sees him. Before they can talk, Lynx arrives there, beaten and bloodied. He reveals that Raz insulted his dream to open a school, and then injured and locked him up so that he could become the examiner for Rick's group. Lynx advises Rick to give up for his own safety, but Rick is burning with rage now. He walks towards the arena with determination to prove that age is just a number, and they can achieve everything through hard work. Meanwhile, Raz creates a massive flame column to welcome Rick and end his journey as an adventurer before it even starts. However, before Rick can come to the arena, Raz is having fun bullying a poor participant who's trembling with fear. He throws a fireball at the poor guy, scorching him in an instant. An adventurer is watching this from the stands, and he thinks that this performance is what he was expecting from an E-rank promotion exam. The man suddenly shatters the fourth wall and introduces himself as Adolf, a popular adventurer. He begins telling the audience about the 4 cores of power, which are strength, dexterity, mana capacity, and mana control. These 4 cores greatly determine the strength and performance of an adventurer, and Adolf was born with a rather magnificent and helpful ability that lets him visualize the 4 cores of power for anyone. He uses his ability on the next contestant and finds that he is slightly better in strength and dexterity, but is still too weak. The bald contestant gets done in just by 1 attack from Raz, and Adolf knew this would happen. He uses his ability on the examiner next and finds that his mana capacity is off the charts, and his mana control is also great. Adolf exclaims that he is indeed an A-rank hunter, but then suddenly, his eyes start hurting because looking at powerful people with his ability for a prolonged period of time is not good for his health. So Adolf begins looking at the Weakling who is being carried away on a stretcher. Suddenly, he notices Rick standing in the corner, and at first glance, Adolf thinks that he is a rather dull-looking man. He is amused at the idea that someone is trying to pass this exam at his age, and he is also curious about his stats. So he uses his ability on him, and the triangle of Rick's strength, dexterity, and mana control begins growing far beyond the range of the chart. Within just 1 second of watching him, Adolf is rolling on the ground as he feels that his eyes are burning. On the other hand, Elisa approaches Ree, stating that she saw him with Rick yesterday. She introduces herself as Rick's junior from when he worked in the guild, and Ree introduces herself as a fellow party member of Rick. They seem to be getting along well when suddenly, Alice calls Ree asking to watch the next match with them. Ree invites Elisa to watch Rick's performance with the rest of the party members, and she gladly agrees. However, as she gets close enough to see the rather odd-looking party, she is frightened on seeing an orc there. The elf Miz asks Ree to take a seat next to him, but she refuses, citing that he intrudes into her personal space. He immediately shifts his attention to Elisa instead, and Ree introduces her as Rick's former co-worker. Just then, Rick walks onto the arena, and the wise orc Ash asks Ree how their old rookie is doing. Ree is confident that Rick will pass the test without any difficulty, but Elisa remarks that Raz is known to be a devilishly tough examiner. She tells Ash that Raz is an A-rank adventurer, and he uses overwhelming force to subdue the low-ranking adventurers. The orc says that it is not anything to worry about and returns his focus on the upcoming fight. In the arena, Raz expresses his surprise to find that Rick somehow survived the assault of his elite guards. He says that it must be because they are incompetent commoners, but a genius noble like him won't give his opponent any chance to escape. Rick can see the terrifying aura being released by Raz in proportion to his mana capacity, and the examiner can also notice that Rick barely has any mana. Rick suddenly asks Raz a question about the reason that propelled him to be an adventurer. He replies that he became an adventurer because he had talent for it, and it would look good on his resume as a noble as well. He says that he is already bored of it, so he will quit this line of work soon enough. His words disgust Rick, who declares that he will never lose to the likes of him. Raz laughs, saying that he will soon know his place. He decides to start the test with an ice shot magic spell that whizzes right past Rick's ear and hits the wall below. Rick didn't even move to dodge it, and Raz asks if he was so scared that he could not move from his place. Rick doesn't respond to his taunts because right before the match started, Ree told him to keep calm and observe his opponent's movement during the first minute of the match. It has taken all his patience to do that, but Rick decides to believe in Ree's advice. Seeing that he's not attacking, Raz decides to take the initiative, and he shoots a class 3 fire magic at him without incantation. Rick takes the magic head-on, and Elisa starts worrying about his safety. Rick comes out of the flame unharmed, and Ash tells the receptionist that such a tiny attack won't be able to harm their old rookie at all. He asks her if she knows about the four cores of power, and Elisa says that she knows about them. Ash then tells her that out of the four cores, mana capacity must be trained from a young age because as a person grows old, it becomes tougher to increase it. There's probably no person who can increase their mana capacity after the age of 20, but Rick started adventuring at 30. Ash says that because of this reason, Rick has a very small amount of mana. So when he was training him, the first thing he told him was to always rely on his body. The orc gave Rick his first mission, which was to go to a nearby village, but he had to do so with an ankle weight of 100 kilos. Rick was freaking out already, but then Ash told him to quickly follow him because the forest they were training in was full of dangerous monsters. Rick ran as fast as he could with the weight tying down his feet, and that was how his first training session ended with Ash. Back to the present, Raz uses a class 4 wind spell on Rick next, but he endures that too. Ash proudly proclaims that he forged Rick's strength from the ground up. Miz was in charge of teaching him mana control, and Ree helped him increase his dexterity. Ash says that Rick met their grueling training with his effort, and because of that, he already has abilities on par with S-rank hunters now. Elisa is stunned by these words, but the proof seems to be in front of her eyes as Rick endures another class 4 magic spell from Raz. Ree tells the receptionist that Rick is not aware of his true strength, because Ash kept belittling his achievements and telling him that even F-rank adventurers could do that. Meanwhile, in the arena, Raz launches a deadly combo of various element magic spells at Rick while calling him a third rate. He crushes him under 2 huge boulders and thinks that he overdid it, but Rick comes out unharmed from between them. Raz is pissed now, so he decides to finish things with his fists. He charges his fists with a powerful attack spell and then rushes ahead at Rick with a flash step that his little sister has mastered. However, Rick counters the examiner's punch with his own and sends him back to his starting position. Raz doesn't understand what happened just now, but Rick has started to come to a conclusion. He thinks that Raz was born with great talents and his mana capacity is surely something to boast about. However, his other aspects seem to be lacking, and Rick believes that it is because he neglected training because of his arrogance. He is certain that he can't lose to Raz in any case now. On the other hand, Raz decides to reveal his true power and sends a class 3 fire spell at Rick after reciting the full incantation. However, Rick just blows away the spell with his bare hands, saying that he doesn't even need to use a spell to block such spells. Raz tells him not to get too confident because his luck saved him once. He rushes ahead at full speed, but he is too slow for Rick, who catches up to him in an instant. Raz immediately turns his body to steel to defend against Rick's punch. Despite using a high-level defense spell, Raz feels some pain from the punch. He admits that Rick's abilities are beyond E rank, but he is still certain that he is still standing here because of coincidences. Rick asks if he is so afraid of acknowledging his abilities, and Raz asks how someone with just a sliver of mana can become so strong in 2 years. That question brings up some traumatic memories of the time he was locked in a dragon's cage until he could defend it. He had to run through a field with explosives rigged at each step, and even swam in a lake of paralytic poison till he drowned. Ash is telling all this to Elisa at the same time, and she freaks out, saying that anyone would die from these things. Ash says that Rick indeed died, but he brought him back to life by using his healing magic shortly after his death. This way, Rick became stronger than anyone else by breaking through his limits. Miz agrees that Rick is indeed a hard worker as he remembers the time he kicked him off a cliff, asking him to feel the flow of wind against his skin to improve his mana control. Another time, Alice threw a giant boulder at him while they were sparring. He died both times, but Ash brought him back. However, in Ree's training, he managed to stay alive somehow. Rick also finishes narrating these instances to Raz, who laughs and tells him to quit being an adventurer and start writing fantasy stories instead. He asks Rick what motivated him to endure all that hellish training, and he proudly declares that his dream of defeating the greatest monster called Kaiser Elasapia helped him pull through everything. Raz laughs at him, saying that the monster called Kaiser and the book about the hero Yamato who fought him is just a fairy tale. Rick says that he doesn't care what anyone else thinks because defeating Kaiser is still his dream. Raz has had enough now, so he decides to finish the battle with his next move. He immediately ties Rick with some sturdy vines and then chants the spell for a class 8 magic, which is as high humans can go. Rick recognizes the spell Raz is chanting, but it is too late as thick branches sprout behind him and take the form of a giant golem. Raz goes inside the golem, ready to finish Rick once and for all. In response, Rick prepares an air shot, a class 1 wind magic to pierce him. Raz laughs at him and says that this pathetic magic won't save him. Rick asks him how many times has he practiced his spell because he has practiced the air shot 100 million times. No one can believe that absurd number, but Ash affirms that it is true, and they used a special time-space magic to make it possible. Raz doesn't care, and he attacks Rick with his golem's magic fist. Rick also frees himself from the restraints and matches the golem's punch with his wind shot. Their attacks seem to be equal in strength, but then suddenly, the wooden golem starts splitting. Rick's air shot wins against the class 8 magic and shatters the entire golem and sends Raz flying away. He crash lands in the stands, leaving everyone in the audience astonished. Later, Rick goes to meet his party members who congratulate him on his victory. Elisa is also there with them, and she tells Rick that he was really cool earlier. Just then, Raz also comes there, limping and struggling from the damage he received earlier. Rick calls out to him and says that the reason he won against a genius like him was because he practiced a lot harder than him. He says that even though he can only use one attack, he practiced it for much longer than anyone else and fully mastered it. Rick advises Raz to start training on one spell at a time, and the frustrated examiner walks right past him. He tells Rick that on his next promotion exam he will meet him again, and that time he will definitely defeat him. He limps away with that, and his two siblings follow, but the arrogant knight Angelica bows to Rick, confusing him. Later that evening, the results for the E-rank promotion exams are announced, and Rick patiently waits for his number to be called with Ree by his side, while his friends have already gone to celebrate the occasion.